Hermes members, I'm pleased to welcome you to the 2021 Hermes AGM and Leaders Forum held with physical presence and not anymore Zoom, because don't forget, we're an industry, we present aviation, that means connecting the people, and we have to promote to everyone that if we don't do this, then nobody else will do it before us. And we have to present to everyone that we meet physically and it's safe to travel. And I'm really thrilled to have the representative of the Greek government today that later today will deliver keynote address, because I feel proud as a Greek that this government was a pioneer and promoted the green certificate that facilitate not only Europe but also coming people to Europe with the vaccination certificate and to facilitate to travel. Hermes, despite these challenges that the industry has facing over the last 18 months, has managed to organize 3 major regional events in Europe together with Hellenic Aviation Society, in Latin America with Aeronautica Civil de Colombia, and last week in Africa with IPADIS. COVID-19 crisis has clearly demonstrated that cooperation and leadership is critical for the future of air transportation. For that reason, this year the theme of the 2021 Recommendations and Leaders Forum is entitled Resilience and Efficiency Throughout Leadership and Cooperation. I would like to thank Professor Andrea Papatheodorou, that is Hermes Report Committee member, and Professor University of the Aegean, for providing the Zoom platform for those that will participate digitally only during our assembly, and our sponsors, Athens International Airport and Golter. And now I have the pleasure to invite Angela Gittens, who will present the 2021 recommendations. Angela, as you know, is a board member of Hermes, and used to be also is the former immediate past Director General of ACI World. Please welcome Angela.
Thank you, Kostas, and thank you for your wonderful hospitality last night. For those of you who were able to join us, it was just an absolute pleasure. I think for many of us, it was our first social occasion, and we handled it well. I think, you know, we kind of not used to people, but we did it. The food and the libations were excellent. I want to thank the 14 organizations that submitted briefs for the Hermes recommendations. I won't go through all of the organizations and all of the commentary. I will focus on the recommendations themselves. But just as an introduction, I think this came from ACI World, from Felipe. Last year, 2020, will go down as the worst year ever in the history of international civil aviation. I think we can pretty much all agree with that. But just as aviation recovered from previous crises, the industry will recover again from this pandemic. But for this recovery to happen quickly, all stakeholders have to align as best possible. So we are thankful that we have a Hermes organization to facilitate those kinds of discussions and those kinds of suggestions. In soliciting the briefs from the aviation organizations, Hermes asked the 3 major questions to be considered. What are the shared goals of the stakeholders in the aviation industry? Who should assume a leadership role in industry decision-making? And are there cooperative arrangements that can be put in place to guide individual state actions? Oh, I'm sorry. Usually I'm too loud. So based on the brief submitted, it appears that the industry is quite unified in its shared goals to restore confidence in aviation and to build back a better industry. There is strong sentiment as well that intergovernmental and inter-industry associations should lead the post-pandemic recovery. And finally, cooperative initiatives are seen as key to developing guidelines for recovery. So here are the recommendations that have been proposed. Develop ongoing research initiatives for risk assessment and risk abatement reducing threats to the industry from unilateral state initiatives in crisis management, as well as in providing important information to disseminate to the public, the policymakers, and all involved stakeholders. Continue industry initiatives under leading organizations, most notably ICAO, to develop industry guidelines and protocols to enhance safety and efficiency and boost confidence and morale in the aviation industry. And thirdly, build back better. Although the COVID-19 pandemic contributed an unprecedented blow, it also represents an opportunity to build back better. Therefore, the industry should further the cooperative initiatives developed during the pandemic to implement innovative technologies and procedures, both evolving and disruptive. These will facilitate aviation processes, contribute to safety and security, increase efficiency, and reduce the environmental footprint in the industry. And with respect to environment and climate change, I think that will be our industry's ticket to building confidence and gaining credibility outside of our industry. I think, as we've seen, our biggest challenges come from outside of the industry. They come from strange places, in this case, a virus. For us to be able to have the direct contact that we need from the decision makers, we have to show more than just our self-interest. We have to show that we contribute to the greater society. And environment and contribution to climate change may be the way that we do that. So I leave that as food for thought as we continue the discussion today. And let me thank our fellow committee members, Professor Martin Dresner, who was the chair, Dr. Bernard Aliou, President of IPADIS, who was the former President of ICAO, the Secretary General of ICAO, no, President of ICAO Council, sorry, and Professor Andreas. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. And I'm the pleasure to invite Jeff Poole, President of Hermes, to deliver his keynote. Jeff.
Thank you, Kostas, and I'd like to again repeat the thanks of everybody to you and Evgenia for your generous hospitality and even better than usual food last night. I think everybody really appreciated that, and it's such a unique catalyst for Hermes as an organisation. So my duty this morning is to just say a few words of introduction on behalf of the Hermes Air Transport Organisation. This isn't very Greek, but Roman Emperor Julius Caesar was famous for talking about friends, Romans and countrymen. Now we have some countrymen here, and a special thanks to our Greek friends and especially the Minister for your, as usual, wonderful hospitality and for arranging this wonderful weather for us. It helps. I'm not sure we have any Romans here today, but from an Englishman's point of view, hopefully they're all panicking about the England versus Italy football game on Sunday evening. But what we do have here are a lot of friends, because Hermes is an organisation of friends. We all know each other and we share that common passion for aviation and everything that goes with it, including the travel and tourism aspects and the hospitality industry and so on. And it's because Hermes is an organisation of prominent leaders in aviation that our focus tends to be on the human-related aspects and leadership. So the theme of this year for Hermes of resilience and efficiency through leadership and cooperation, I believe, hits the nail right on the head, and has been already been very popular. And I can only say we were overwhelmed and very thankful for the 14 papers that Angela referred to. And in today's climate, with everybody working from home and so on, the amount of effort that individual associations put into those papers was very evident from the quality of them, I think. So that's really good. Now, for this audience, I don't need to give you the statistics or explain the benefits of aviation in terms of the economic benefits, the social benefits, the impact on the livelihoods of people and communities. We all know that, and it's probably been illustrated most severely by the absence of aviation and travel. And we all, we continue to hear and use the words like, unprecedented world crisis, the worst ever year for aviation, etc. And that really reinforces, as we know, the need to restore confidence in travellers, the general public, restore confidence in governments, it has to be said as well, in order that we can recover quickly and put that back. That's essential for a selfish point of view from the whole air transport sector, but of course air transport plays such an important role in recovering the world, including the distribution of vaccines, which is going to be the answer for everybody. Now, in terms of leadership and cooperation in aviation, we can point to some excellent work that's been done, whether that's the industry protocols or the work that's been done through the ICAO CART process, and all of that is excellent. But frankly, in my view, we're still not doing enough given the unique nature of the situation we face. And we see the world as being very fragmented. Even there are successes in vaccinations in many countries, but on the other hand, and shamefully, vaccinations in places like Africa are at only about 2% at the present time. And we are a global business that requires international travel, so to use the cliche, none of us is better until all of us is better. And we do see this very fragmented approach within governments and between governments, different policies, processes, opening borders and so on. And for those of us that have travelled here to Greece, from the conversations yesterday evening, everybody has a story about what happened when they had their COVID test, or what happened when they came through immigration, or what didn't happen when they came through immigration. So we're still terribly disorganised. And my personal sense is that we do need to step up, because what we're addressing this unprecedented situation by continuing to use pretty much our conventional tools and processes and relationships. For example, one example of that, I think, is great work from the ICAO CART process, but actually the implementation is not mandatory, it's voluntary, so it's a very patchy national approach to the ICAO CART recommendations. How the hell are we going to rebuild aviation quickly and effectively on that sort of basis? And if our dear friend Eamon Brennan were here, I know that he would be saying to us that the definition of stupidity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Well, we need a different result, and so we've got to do something different. But when we talk about resilience and efficiency through leadership and cooperation, what does that actually mean? What does it look like? Do we have a common vision? How do we make it happen? What are the new catalysts that we need, and what do we need just to do to step up as leaders and change things? Is whether that's different things or additional things? And that's a real challenge, because not only do we face the situation we know on COVID and all of the international regulations and so on, but you have to question how much of our industry is going to be there to have that recovery, because it's immensely fragile and we can see gaps opening up in various sectors right now. So my final remark is actually a request. Those of you that know me and in particular have worked closely with me know that I have a passion for ensuring actionable, concrete deliverables. So my expectations for today are much more than having nice discussions with nice friends in a nice garden in nice weather. So my request, please, is in the discussions, can we try to focus on recommendations which will change the outcomes in the way that we want? You know, in short, what can we be doing? What should we be doing as industry leaders, as leaders of our individual organizations and companies, as Hermes members, and as the wonderful individuals that you all are. So thank you. I look forward to a wonderful day with you. Thanks.
Thank you, Jeff. And well, the only thing I don't agree with Henrik. I'm supporting Italy for the final, just to.
Good luck with that. You are not the only one.
Huh?
I know how people more.
Anyway, it's my great pleasure now to invite Luis Felipe de Oliveira. He's the Director General of ACI, but also is the Vice President and Treasurer of Hermes. Felipe, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Kostas, and good morning, everybody. It's quite difficult to talk after Angela and especially Jeff. That's why I will try to do my best, especially because I just speaking just before of the minister. That's why I will try to be concise and pass a good message for all of you. Basically, I would like to start with the Kalimera. Kalimera, and first thank you, Dr. Kostas Iatrou, for the all good work he's doing in Hermes for all of us. Minister Harry Theoharis, that takes some time to be here with us today. My dear friends, Henrik, Angela, Jeff, Imon, and many others. If I started to say the name of everybody here, I will spend my 20 minutes talking about the names of the friends that we have here today. I'm happy to be here, and it's truly wonderful to see all of you in person again after many, many months. As you know, one of my last trips that was international was in Cancun, that I have the opportunity to meet the minister. It was the first big event that we participate in so many months, you know. And for all of us here that live with aviation in our blood, with some jet fuel, and some of us with a little bit of wine as well, it's difficult to be separate from people, and difficult to see and not participate in these interactions with everybody. The COVID-19 pandemic, of course, affect all of us, affect the heart of aviation, when the airports record historic revenue losses about $125 billion in 2020, and the trend to project to continue this year for additional $96 billion. 60% of the jobs of the industry are at the airports, and basically all the aviation ecosystem suffers a lot with the pandemic. Passenger traffic was vanished from the airports, but airport operations had to continue, and the asset-intensive infrastructure with a high fixed cost basically makes the financial challenge remain in the recovery period, as ACI forecasts the passenger traffic not expect to recover from 2019 levels before 2024. Nevertheless, huge strides have been made in the last year, and we must continue to face challenge to unique tackle the current pandemic, but also unresolved crises such as the climate change that need to continue to be addressed. Vaccines, coupled with testing and current health measures in place, present our best way of out of this pandemic. Yet, their rollout has been turbulent in different parts of the world. With some places waiting for their first doses, the effort to beat COVID-19 in a large part of the race against the clock. There is an urgent push to inoculate as many people as possible over the next few months, including those that reside in developed nations and hard-reached places. However, I think it's safe to say that we are now entering in the new phase of the pandemic. There are plenty of reasons for optimism. Vaccines have increased significantly around the world. Today we have around 2.4 billion doses of the vaccines already submitted to the populations in different parts of the world. Domestic air travel in countries like the US, China, Russia, in some cases are even exceed the pre-pandemic levels. And many countries are started to easing of the lockdowns in some parts of the world. Failing the infection statistics show that this immunization is beginning to make a positive effects. While the pandemic impact of the industry has been far greater than any crisis we had previously experienced, the aviation industry has not lost sight of our top priority, ensuring the highest level of safety and security for our passengers and operations. Safety remains our top priority, and safe and secure aviation system is crucial to a global recovery. Each stakeholder has a role to play in the end-to-end operation and to ensure an overall high-level safety performance. All segments of the industry have been subjected to a lower levels of operations for over a year, with many of the operational staff on long-term absence operating on reduced shifts and frequencies. Due to this reduced activity, personnel may not have the same confidence, reflex, and ease when returning to the operations at high level of intensity. The success of the recovery and resumption of the global air transport operations rely significantly on the technical and managerial skills of airport safety professionals and airport civil aviation regulators, and their capacity to innovate and face the many challenges now confronting our sector and the societies and industries it serves. To this end, ACI affirms its commitment towards safety to its members and aviation partners, and will continue to participate in activities that serve to promote and improve operational safety managerial excellence of airports worldwide. Furthermore, this crisis has brought into focus the need to continue to work collaboratively as industry in the effort to build back better and continue to prepare for what the future may hold. An excellent example of this establishment is the establishment of the ICAO Council Aviation Recovery Task Force, CART, which has provided the cooperation between all parts of the industry can effectively provide leadership and provide resilience where individual organizations could not. Work together is essential, and I think this crisis will bring us an opportunity to looking forward on the development of the cooperation among the industry, between the industry and the governments, and the industry and all stakeholders. CART takeoff guidance document has been essential to underpin the global harmonized measures that will support a safe, secure, and sustainable restart and recovery of the aviation sector. The CART recommendations continue to provide strategic guidance to the entire aviation community through the COVID-19 pandemic, including in the relation prevention of the spread of the virus, the operations of critical humanitarian repatriation and air cargo flights, and the reopening of the regular air services. From the beginning, ACI World has been active member of the CART, advocating on behalf of airport members, and will continue to promote the members' interests, working closely with ICAO and industry parties in the effort to build back better. ACI launches the Airport Health Accreditation Program that is based on the CART measures, and the participants in the world have surpassed 500 airports, which represents around 70% of global passenger traffic. This is a significant achievement considering that we have 2,000 members in the world that comprise 98.5% of the global traffic. The Airport Health Accreditation Program continues to meet the needs of our members and demonstrate that the airport's commitment to delivering the objectives sent from the CART, showing the harmonization, and we expect the program to continue to exist for many years to come, and we will keep updating to reflect the current climate. The pandemic has had enormous impact on the airports, but not diminishing the industry commitment on sustainability with a continued and increasing focus on climate change. It was always been the case that our permission to operate and grow both at local and global levels will only be attained when airports with wider aviation community and governments work together to address, minimize and mitigate the environmental impacts of the aviation. As a climate change and need for sustainability development continues to be on the top of the political agenda. Now, more than ever, we need to show that aviation is part of the solution and not part of the problem. Last month, we announced our long-term carbon goal for airports. ACI member airports at the global level commit to reach net zero carbon emission by 2050. And we urge the governments to provide the necessary support in this endeavor. This net zero goal is focused on carbon emissions under the direct control of the airport operations, which are members of ACI. But airports cannot do this alone. If we are to realize this ambitious target, we must work closely with the wider aviation community and count with the support of governments and key stakeholders to address, minimize, and mitigate the environmental impacts of the continued aviation growth. We also recognize that each airport, country, and region is different. The long-term carbon goal is ambitious and aspirational to intend to be adopted by individual airports according with the local conditions and with the support from the local governments. ACI will be there every step of the way to support our members in their efforts to build back better, and will continue to adapt and improve our assistance to reflect the developments on this area. We have every reason to have a confidence that we will win this battle. But nothing is over yet. We must stay focused and remain disciplined and keep the current pace of the progress. Air transport has always been an industry based and interdependence of all parts, and to ensure that aviation can continue to provide economic and social benefits to the communities we serve. It's imperative that we will continue to get the vaccinations efficiently and equitably distributed to the public. And above all, we must continue the effort of international solidarity and collaboration, which will be essential for the safe, secure, and sustainable restart and recovery of the aviation sector. It's wonderful to see you all again, and I wish you a great day ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Felipe. And now, before I invite our honorary guest, I would like to tell you that this year is a very important year for Greece, as we celebrate 200 years from the Greek Revolution. And then probably you might ask, what is the flag we have in our house? Normally we have the Greek national flag, but this was one of the flags of the revolution. And as we have this celebration, 200-year celebration, then I said it was appropriate to celebrate our independence and the nation that we are here. And I say now because we have the honor to welcome His Excellency Minister of Tourism, Theoharis, that it's representing the President of the Greek government that will deliver a keynote address. And as I said to you earlier, the success story of Greece over the last years, and especially linked with aviation, and connecting the people and bring people and tourists here. Mr. Theoharis.
Well, I want first of all to thank Kostas, Renea, Giorgos and Yannis for hosting us here. It is a great pleasure in this beautiful setting next to the island to be able to see all of you. And I would like, of course, to thank the speakers before, and especially Hermes as an organization that gave me the opportunity to speak today. It feels like I'm among friends, so I'm not sure I'm gonna follow on the footsteps of my prepared speech, because I think we should try to take a step back and try to assess what happened, what worked, what are the lessons, and perhaps what lies ahead. I feel very, very fortunate to be able to speak to you today, because I feel Hermes is a very important organization, not because it is defending the industry, but because of its role in shaping the industry. We live in a world in transition, but some industries are in more transition than others. And I think the aviation industry is at a crossroads. It has to deal with many, many challenges. It was hit much, much harder than other industries, together with tourism, of course, with this pandemic. So it has to respond in a very, very forceful manner. So it's very, very important to look at things with a fresh look and see what can be done. This pandemic, of course, is a tragedy, but at the same time, it has transformed, if you like, a nudge that was before the pandemic into a push. And we all know, with the discussion about the penalty with Denmark, the difference between a nudge and a push is a very, very important difference, not to be taken lightly. So we are thinking again about sustainability, but we should also remind ourselves that during this pandemic, we understood again, some knew it even before, but we understood, all of us now understand, that sustainability is not just about the environment. It's about the social and economic sustainability. The three dimensions of sustainability are there. And a world without aviation is not a balanced world. Aviation is part of the fabric of what we all regard as normality. Of course, we have to change things. We have to respond, like Angela said. We have to show the environmental credentials of aviation industry, and if we cannot find them, we have to create them. But at the same time, we have to understand that thousands of people depend on aviation, depend on tourism for the livelihood, and of course, a lot of what makes the world go round in the rest of the industries depends on aviation. We know it as Greece, because our tourism, our number one industry, an industry that's more than 20% of GDP, together with the secondary effects of the industry, is very much dependent on aviation. More than 2/3 of the people that come to Greece come through the airlines, the airports. And so this is very, very important. And actually, it's 2/3 in terms of the number of people, but it's almost 90% in terms of the revenue of the Greek tourism sector, because the drive-in tourism is, on average, a lower tier tourism. So let me take a step back and try to remember what we did, since I think it's common knowledge that we did respond to this pandemic in a fashion which was above average. So we will try to share what we learned. We didn't do everything right, of course, nobody did, there's no blueprint. But there are a few lessons that we can all learn. The first is that you have to tackle the problems head on. Our Prime Minister took the decision to cancel carnival celebrations with only 2 cases in the country, in Thessaloniki, and we canceled them 600 kilometers in Patras a week later. So this was a difficult decision, but a decision recognizing and learning from the lessons of other countries as things happened and unfolded. We have to tackle the problems. There's no sense in letting those problems fester. And of course, you can draw the parallels to the industry and what those problems are or whatever it is. I will not try to give advice. Nobody accepts politicians to give advice. We're not trusted enough to give advice. So the second lesson is that we immediately recognize that this problem is bigger than any single country. This problem required international cooperation. So we immediately energized and acted through the channels that were available to us. UNWTO, the Tourism Crisis Committee. I suggested that we create also a Tourism Crisis Technical Committee, which I chaired with the acceptance of the Secretary General. We surveyed all those passes, IATA pass and whatnot, 22 of them. So we recognized immediately how fragmented the landscape was. So it's important to talk and talk again and try to create cooperation. Of course, it's a difficult matter. It's very, very difficult because the fear factor on the health issues, we feel it ourselves, for our family, for ourselves. You can imagine that the same thing happens for every government, is to protect and close in and, go back to a cocoon mode. So it was very, very difficult to explain, to say that we need more cooperation. But slowly, this was realized, I think. You can compare the European Union's response going into the crisis. Every country was on its own. There was no discussion. And a few months later, there was, a common approach. This was not easy to do, so sometimes it takes leadership to do. Last year, I remember that we were pushing for a common approach towards third countries. Which country is allowed, which is not allowed. And the decision was not forthcoming in Europe. Europe, by the way, is uniquely advantaged in this kind of situation because it has the fora, it has the mechanisms of discussion. The table is there, the chairs are there, and the mode of participation and cooperation is there. It's much, much different than Africa, Latin America, Asia, and whatnot. So we should have been much better at this. Well, initially we were not. We were exactly like everybody else. But as we did not see the discussions happening, we came first, Greece, last year and said these are the 27 countries that we will allow, and that immediately sent electric shocks everywhere. I remember the French ambassador calling, there was hectic days, and that forced Europe to create a common position, and then we retracted our position and, of course, joined forces with the common decision on the third country's mobility, and that also forced the internal mobility question out in the open. So it takes leadership sometime, not to be first, not to try to jump the gun, but really to force everyone to think about those issues, because the normal mode is to leave the problems until they become too big to deal with. Then the next lesson is that you have to be very, very complete in your system. We had to talk to the doctors and try to assess each and every country. Those traffic light systems, the data, and everything. But then that was not enough, because there's no data homogeneity. I mean, every country reports different data, and we try to understand the differences. Of course, international organizations like your organizations you know, ACI, ICAO, especially WHO in this case, WHO, are there to try to force everyone to report in a similar ways and make the data comparable, but still, there were important differences. That meant that we had to devise ways to double check on the data and also, of course, feel confident that we were not taking undue risk. We created a system in our borders, an artificial intelligence system that took positivity rates every day in our testing and calculated with the algorithm a risk value for each individual as they did the passenger locator form in order to see whether they're going to be tested or not. That allowed us to have a number of advantages. The first advantage was that we were able to see positivity rates and see the real risk we were getting from different countries 2 weeks before those countries changed their own data. So we would see the positivity rates going up 2 weeks before France, say, rates were going up, or going down 2 weeks before their notification rates were going down. So that allowed us to make decisions earlier, to block or not block or put testing requirements or do whatever. The second thing is, of course, in order to do this, we had to do an electronic-only passenger locator form. We were the first, perhaps the only country forcing everyone to go online, because we had to get everyone on the previous day who's coming the next day, and then calculate which one is going to be tested or not tested right at the midnight. That's why you're getting your reply on the midnight of the day of arrival, because we're calculating who's going to be tested and who's not going to be tested. So that, of course, made life more difficult for some people, of course, that are not well-versed, or created issues and problems and explanations, but it's, you have to pay the price and you have to make those choices. There's no solution that's you know, on the positive side on every aspect. So you have to make your own balance and your own risk assessment. Then you have the protocols, of course, that work. We were also able to calculate with the system the kind of risk, the number of cases that we were not testing and importing, because of course we're able to see that. We saw that the efficiency of our testing was doubled by this system. So we were testing 10 people, but removing 20 as if we were testing 20 people, the number of cases. And also we had a heat map of the country, because we knew which hotel they were going to in terms of where we had more imported cases, to be able to send the mobile units to do more testing in the areas where we had more cases. So if Serbia, we were importing many cases from Serbia, and they were going to Katerini or Halkidiki, we knew that the problematic areas were there to send the mobile units. So the details perhaps don't matter. The important thing is it has to be complicated, it has to be complete, it has to be well thought out, and also we have to do the work. We cannot fake it. We cannot just say that airplanes are fine. The filters have to be there, the protocols have to be there, the serving has to change. I mean, we have to make changes in order to ensure that the brand of the industry, of the airline, of the airport, of the country is preserved. That's the only way. We cannot avoid the work. So the next lesson is that you should never stop innovating. Our major innovation last year was that system, but this year we have vaccines. We have rapid tests. We didn't have those. We're able to test more people. It's more cost effective at our borders. So we're changing. We're not saying, oh, WTTC gave us the award, we are the best in the world, let's do the same this year. No, this is not the way. find other ways to make it cheaper, faster, better, simpler. Simpler is important. Last year, just to show some problems as well, not just say how great we have done everything. Last year, our fear factor was much bigger. I was trying to push for the opening while I was the fourth priority. I mean, the health, the situation with the immigrants, perhaps with Turkey were other priorities and other issues and problems. That's why, for example, our TravelGov page was managed by the Civil Protection Authority. So it was very much a barking page, not a, you know, careful, don't forget this, don't do that, you're not coming in the country unless you have your papers, da, 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 da. I was asking for translation, they were saying, no, we're changing all the time, English is enough. Otherwise, who's going to translate it? This year, we try to make it more user-friendly. We already have 9-10 languages, and we try to add more. We try to make it simpler to understand. We try to make it, you know, friendly for the traveler, because we want to allow them to travel. We don't want to make them afraid of traveling. So make those changes, make it easier, make it friendly. Look at your systems. Some of the things that we're changing now, like 9/11, we've been through this process again. Some of those things that we're doing will stay with us forever. They will never be removed. So the changes, the innovation that you need to do in your systems, airport or airline systems, have to be there for the long term to make things simpler and easier. And finally, we try to move away from a horizontal risk assessment system this year to a much more personal risk assessment. So we try to change the traffic light system. We almost do not have a traffic light system, but an individual system. If you are vaccinated, you're less of a risk. If you've recovered, you're less of a risk. If you're not, you need to be tested, and perhaps tested again and again in order to allow you the same kind of freedom of movement. So these are the lessons of our journey up to now. I feel that we are very close to the end. This is not scripted, so every time we say we finished, something new happens. It's the Delta variant or the Epsilon variant. It's the new one from California. I know one airline that's going to be very happy that the Epsilon variant will be prevalent. I saw Delta Airlines yesterday, and they said we have a motion to rename it to United or American. It doesn't matter. So. So I think the speed that this thing is happening means that we're reaching the end. I mean, this is really a pandemic, so it will not stop until it has reached each and every last individual, either through the vaccination or through actually catching the disease. I think that is the fate of things to come, and we cannot do much about it except rush as much as we can the vaccination. Greece has a very digital, and this is all part of the internal process of digitalizing our state, but also part of our response to the pandemic as well. And perhaps this is the final lesson that I would like to leave you with. Every problem creates opportunity. For Greece, it was an opportunity to digitalize everything through emails, responses of the tax authority and of the other authorities, through removal of a number of papers that you had to bring in, and you can now just do online applications and whatnot. The vaccination program is an example of that. We you're getting your pre-appointment by an SMS. You just respond yes, and you are appointed. You don't need to apply for an appointment. Only if you don't like it, or if you're not registered for the e-prescriptions, then you have to apply. And then you get 5, 6, 7 reminders, I don't know, before you go. You have both appointments there, the first and the second one. You get reminders before the first one, reminders before, it's almost like brainwashing. And then it's all very automatic and very quick, managed by the army actually, in terms of the mega centers and everything. So we reached a point where we're vaccinated more than 1% of the population of Greece per day. So this system worked well. We had when you do a vaccination program, you have 3 parameters that are important. The first is the organizational. We were, I think, top tier in terms of how we organize this. The second is the vaccine availability. This was very bad initially, but now, of course, at least in Greece and the rest of Europe, it's a different matter in other countries, and I think it's something that we now need to sit down and resolve urgently. Availability was not initially forthcoming, and later on is better. But now, in Greece, like in other countries, we have reached the third problem, which is the wall of resistance, which we need to work with. We've tried everything and the opposite to try to convince people. Some people are not convinced and will never be convinced. Unfortunately, those people will catch the disease. So it's our duty, or we see it as our duty, to try to make it easier for them to get vaccinated and more difficult to stay unvaccinated, with incentives, disincentives, and whatnot. But we will see this fourth wave soaring in the next few weeks, mainly in the younger population. We know it because we've seen Israel, we've seen the US, we've seen countries that were a bit ahead of us in terms of the unfolding of this disease. So, all in all, I think the message is a very, very positive one. If you do this, the efforts are recognized. We have 10 direct flights from the US. We never had so many flights from decades, I think. Cruising, 50% of cruising that happens in Greece, happens in Europe, happens in Greece. More home porting than port of call since 1971. In 1971 was the last year that this happened. Those were the golden days of cruising for Greece. Recovery much stronger. I think 43% is the recovery from the past two weeks in terms of the flights. We are already around 50% recovery from 2019. The Athens International Airport, 45. The regional airports, 55. So roughly on 50%. All in all, it's a very positive, albeit a very difficult year, but I'm pretty certain this is the last year we will have to deal with, and that will allow us to deal with the many problems that lie ahead after the pandemic. And I'm sure with your help, the aviation industry will go on to higher and higher things and higher goals. Thank you very much for all the best in the rest of your AGM.
Thank you. Stay in 1 minute, because we have to give you something.
Well, as you know, last year in the Summer Aviation Forum, we presented the book of the history of commercial aviation that's following the 100 years of commercial aviation. That is a history till 2019. We haven't included 2020. We wait another 5 years, because there's a gap there.
I think we will remove 2020.
I believe. And I will ask the President to give to the Minister this book as a commemoration of your visit here and your keynote address.
Minister.
I think I should go here in front.
Okay.
Oh, that's it.
Thank you for your very open and engaging speech. I'm sure the written one could not be anywhere near as good as your remarks today. For the benefit of the audience, we invited the Minister not just because we're in Greece, but because, as he's demonstrated, he is one of, if not the leading and most successful Minister of Transport, Minister of Tourism, sorry. The life of a tourism minister is usually not very easy because tourism is normally tucked away in some other government department somewhere. But in Greece, tourism has been elevated, and with it the air transport industry elevated to the level it should be, and there's been a remarkable job done of leadership and cooperation both within the Greek government, which is not the case in so many other governments, but also, as the Minister indicated, in leading the way internationally with World Health Organization, ICAO and others. So thank you, Minister.
Thank you.
I'm
Thank you
sure you will enjoy this
I'll take
wonderful
a
book
picture.
written by Kostas. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.